Oh boy, I usually only get this excited when they say the title of a movie in the movie.
Who are you?
The one and only Andy Schmidt.
He said it! He said it!
Welcome to Wrestlespective, the channel that exposes you to wrestling you never knew about and reminds you of the wrestling you'd rather forget. This time we're taking a breather from all that for another wrestling movie review. I'm really excited for this one. It's got some of my favorite actors and one of my favorite comedians as a director. It's 1978's The One and Only. Last time I did a movie review, it was for the incredibly outlandish and fun Kill City Cup. This movie, though, is a slight opposite. It's a little more realistic, but still a lot of fun. The One and Only is a comedy about a wannabe actor, Andy Schmidt, who stumbles into the wacky world of 1950s pro wrestling. Firstly, the film is directed by comedy legend Carl Reiner. Reiner was a longtime writer and actor in the golden age of television. Working as a writer on Sid Caesar's Your Show of Shows, he created and co-starred on The Dick Van Dyke Show, and was a longtime collaborator with the great Mel Brooks. The team famously created the 2,000-year-old man bit. The year after The One and Only, he directed one of my favorite movies of all time, The Jerk. Secondly, the cast is amazing. The star of the film is Henry Winkler, who in 1978 was at the height of his star power thanks to his role as the Fonz in Happy Days. Quick aside here, everyone knows that the phrase "jump the shark" came from a Happy Days episode, and typically it's used to describe the point that a show gets bad or becomes desperate for viewers. But Happy Days was still the #1 show for a couple years after that one, so maybe we come up with a new phrase that's more accurate. Anyway, I love Henry Winkler. I think he's a great character actor that really has become known for more than just playing Fonzie. Also, he just seems like a super nice guy.
Appreciate you again. I'm gonna take you up on that dinner though. I'm gonna take you up. Absolutely. Off season, I'm gonna make it happen.
Absolutely. There was always a seat at my table.
Appreciate you. Yes, sir.
I appreciate it.
Enjoy it.
The film also stars the actor who played Tattoo from Fantasy Island. I don't want to butcher his name, so I won't attempt it, but here it is. Kim Darby from the original True Grit and Teen Wolf 2. And oh my god, William Daniels from Knight Rider, 1776, Saint Elsewhere, and of course,
Mr. Feeney! Move!
I was expecting you. Today, tomorrow, yesterday.
Boy Meets World. There's also actual pro wrestlers sprinkled in throughout the movie, but we'll talk about them as they pop up. The film grossed $16 million at the box office. Chump change compared to the $159 million brought in by Grease, but it still landed at number 25 in the top 50 for the year. So middle-of-the-road success. Well, is it in fact a mid-movie? Let's find out. We open with a child Andy entertaining family in his living room, where it's clear he's a born entertainer. We flash forward to the late 1940s, early 50s, Andy is in college at Ohio Southern University. First thing we see is him flirting with co-ed Mary. It's actually a pretty funny exchange, and by the end of it, he's able to chase her down and land a date. We're introduced to Andy's theater group at school, where we learn that Andy isn't just a born entertainer, but he also needs to be the center of attention. Later, we catch up with Andy and Mary on their date, and it's not going that well. Again, he puts himself over and tells Mary how great he is and he'll be a star, etc., etc. Mary starts to consider leaving, so Andy, of course, bursts into song in the middle of the restaurant. And she falls for it, and by the time the check comes, she's all smiles. Don't fall for it, Mary, this guy sucks. Hard cut to the locker room prior to a football game because apparently Andy also plays football? Christ, this guy is busy. He's way too amped for the game, and the coach reminds him that he rides the bench. Good job, coach. But there's an injury, and Andy gets put into the game, where he fakes an injury, and as he's being stretchered off the field, tells the guys to take their time so he can really sell it.
Don't rush. Don't rush.
We then join in on Mary and Andy's next date that also doesn't go so well. They have a little discussion and she calls Andy out on his shit. That he can never be serious and she's not even sure if his feelings for her are real or an act. They part ways and Mary decides she doesn't want to see him anymore. Sometime later, Andy is told by his roommate that Mary's gotten engaged. Andy realizes he needs Mary and he runs off to win her back. Cut to Mary and her maybe ex-boyfriend, now fiancé. It's never made clear if she's been cheating on this Paul fella. He also sucks, but in a pompous kind of way. Andy barges in and makes a spectacle of himself, but it's pretty funny. He and Mary have a heart-to-heart and they get together. We get to Andy's play for his big moment, which is only one line. But of course he milks it for all it's worth. It's later that night and Andy and Mary lay in bed and Andy talks about their future together. That they'll move to New York so he can pursue his acting dream. He says they'll get married first though. That's your proposal, you psychopath? Mary brings Andy home to meet her parents. And her dad is Mr. Feeney. William Daniels is great in this scene as he just ignores this nut job. He impresses the mom and little brother so he passes the test. 2 out of 3 and all that. Afterward, Mary does have this great line though.
Are we still getting married?
We have to. Too embarrassed to have you as a date.
They get married and move to New York City. We get more pillow talk where Andy picks up that Mary is scared about their current situation. You know, where he's an unemployed actor and she's the only functional member of society in this household. And she drops the bomb that she's pregnant. Get your shit together, Andy. Andy tries to schmooze his way in to see a talent agent. He puts on a big ol' hat and fake Italian accent. It doesn't work, but it does remind me of this Muppets bit.
Good afternoon.
Kermit the Frog, my reservation secretary made a reservation for me.
Gesundheit. This way, please.
This is where we meet Milton, who's an actor and also a sex pest. He tries to charm the secretary by humping the table? Also doesn't work. They get lunch and that's where Andy finds out that Milton wrestles on the side. You wear colorful costumes and the crowd goes nuts. That was all Andy needed to hear. Milton trains Andy for his in-ring debut. In the locker room, they have zero kayfabe in this movie, and I love that. They knew it was a work back in the 70s, folks. Andy wrestles Indian Joe, played by Chavo Guerrero. Chavo classic, baby. That's awesome. Andy comes home in terrible pain, all taped up, and that's how Mary finds out that he's become a wrestler. Andy has another failed audition and goes to the wrestling promoter with an idea. A wrestling hypnotist. Andy becomes the evil Dr. Wetzel. It's kind of funny, but it was better when the Osirian Portal did it.
Fitting all by himself, ducks in the clothesline. Amos is catching his spot. Mesmerizing. He's using hypnosis!
There's one woman in the crowd going insane for it, and that makes the whole scene for me. Mary's parents come to visit, and they find out that Andy's a wrestler now. William Daniels has a great response to that revelation.
He wrestles. Dear God.
Nobody wrestles. You mean they pay him to wrestle?
They're later joined by Milton, the promoter Sid, and another wrestler, the Elephant. It's expectedly awkward, but man, Milton just doesn't leave the mom alone. It's kind of gross in hindsight. After the meeting, we find out that Andy was offered a wrestling tour by Sid. But Mary was really disturbed by Milton's behavior and just the behavior of wrestlers in general. They have a very dramatic argument where Mary says that he wants the circus, the freaks, the spotlight. Andy yells at Mary for wanting to give up as soon as things get tough. They hash it out and Andy decided he wouldn't take the tour and get a real job if he didn't get an acting job. Andy tries to break the news to Sid, but he would not let Andy go without trying to convince him. Andy decided to take the tour. That was easy. Andy starts making the towns with Milton and a new gimmick. Adolf Hitler. It's a great representation of 1950s gimmicks. Very on the nose and playing to post-war patriotism. We get a montage of various matches and train trips from territory to territory, and here's some Roddy Piper action. I believe this was his first film. In the montage, we get repetition of a very funny spot with the German helmet that they did night after night. Great detail. We also get a scene with hard-boiled Haggerty. Very cool. Andy has a heart-to-heart with the short-statured perv in Des Moines, where after almost cheating on his wife, he decides he needs to be home. No shit. He runs to Mary, they have a sweet moment, and everything is okay. Don't do this, Mary. Next thing you know, we've got a baby. Flash forward again and we discover that Andy is working for Mary's dad and seems to have turned over a new leaf. Mary even offers him to join the community theater, but he wasn't interested. Later, Mary tells Andy about a telegram he received from Sid, the promoter, that offered him a spot to wrestle on national television. Andy tells Mary he's not taking it, which is good because she'll divorce him as soon as he leaves. We cut to the day of the big television show and Andy seems to be heading out to work. But nope, he's going to wrestle. He's not going to work, he's going to work. Apparently he'd been sneaking out of town? Had this been to wrestle? To work out the deal? We don't really know. But Mary is pissed. She wants a divorce. Finally, well done, Mary. We head to Madison Square Garden where Andy debuts his new gimmick, the Lover. A very Gorgeous George-inspired character, complete with perfume spray and Milton as his valet. In wrestling, who I believe is Gene LaBelle? This is Gene LaBelle, right? The Lover gets over huge as a heel, and Andy seems elated. He's the star he always dreamed of being. He gets back to what I believe is his hotel room, and seems a bit sad. Then Mary and the baby come by, and oh, come on, they patch things up. But not before Mary kicks his ass and lays down some ground rules that I have a feeling other wrestling wives have issued.
Here are the rules. You do what you have to do. We'll have the midgets to dinner, we'll have the Indians over for drinks, but when you and I are alone, you're you and I'm me, and Andrew gets to watch two people in love love each other.
Good for her. Andy gets to have his family and be a star in the wacky world of pro wrestling. So it's a happy ending. I really liked most of this movie. A lot of the humor still holds up some 45 years later, but some of it also does not hold up. There is nothing incredibly offensive aside from promoter Sidney dropping the F slur at one point. I think I would have liked the movie more if Andy wasn't so unlikable. If he was honestly pursuing a dream of being a wrestler and the comedy came from him trying different gimmicks or trying to juggle the two worlds, his real life and his wrestling life, I would have rooted for him. Really though, I was rooting for Mary to leave his ass. Andy is just so desperate for fame that he constantly risks his relationship and sabotages his own acting career at every turn with his unchecked ego. The only thing that makes Andy likable is that he's played by Henry Winkler, who is naturally charming and likable. If he was played by anyone else, I don't think there'd be anything redeeming about him. Overall, I did like The One and Only. It's a pretty funny look at the entertainment business of the 1950s. Is it as good as The Jerk? Absolutely not, no. But it's got a similar story of someone who's not very good at anything, finding his way to make it in the world, with silliness ensuing around them. Again, it's not nearly as good. At times I feel like they fast forward too much without catching us up on specifics. But it's got some great wordplay and the more dramatic scenes are broken up nicely with the perfect jokes that don't really take away from the heart of the scene.
I haven't paid for that yet.
If you've never seen The One and Only, it's only 90 minutes, it's on YouTube, so it's worth your time and money, I'd say. Again, it's got the silly, quick Carl Reiner humor, so if you're a fan of that type of comedy, maybe you'll like this too. Next time on the Wrestlespective movie review, I think I want to watch a movie featuring one of my favorites from the Attitude Era, that I don't think a lot of people know about, Champion with Ken Shamrock. So be on the lookout for that one down the line. I'm Scott from Wrestlespective. Watch wrestling, love wrestling, thanks for watching.